Last year, we asked our staff and Patreon supporters to submit their top 10 votes for the first ever Nintendo World Report Hall of Fame. The rules for the selection process were simple. Titles submitted were must-play masterpieces on Nintendo platforms. These games also had to be at least 5 years old. The initial list of submissions included 77 different titles. We then asked the voting board to pick out their favorite 15 games from this giant list and came up with the top 15 games selected by everyone. The final list was then taken to one last vote. If these games received over at least 50% approval rating from members of the voting board, they will go down in history as some of the greatest pieces of software ever to hit a Nintendo platform. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the results are in. I present to you the NWR Hall of Fame.
It's me, Mario!
In our inaugural class of the Nintendo World Report Hall of Fame, several no-brainers cropped up. Super Mario 64, the cutting-edge 3D platformer that essentially redefined the entirety of video games, was one of them. Its importance is hard to overstate because it was so integral and key to the advent of polygonal 3D games. According to Shigeru Miyamoto, the concept of Mario 64 dates back to the development of Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. It never made it to any significant solidified form, but the concept of creating a 3D Mario game appeared to have been ingrained in the fabled game creator's mind way back then. As Nintendo started to turn toward the development of their Super NES successor, Miyamoto and the top game-making minds at Nintendo started to more seriously dive into this 3D Mario idea. What made this radical new version of the platformer work is that its team at Nintendo focused mostly on character movement and the camera before making levels. Their logic was that if Mario didn't feel right, the whole thing might fall apart. The testing for this primarily involved Mario running around an environment chasing a rabbit, something not at all that dissimilar from the opening. One of the most crucial elements was the inclusion of a shadow underneath Mario that would help out in judging the depth of the character when moving. This iterative process of refinement guided the team at this early stage as they worked through isometric viewpoints and linear levels until they settled on the explorative, open design of the final game. Super Mario 64 was first presented to the world at the first ever Space World show in late 1995. It was one of 2 playable games for the newly named Nintendo 64 at the show. A little more than 6 months after the unveiling, Super Mario 64 launched in Japan on June 23rd of 1996 to wild acclaim. This was followed by debuts in America on September 29th, 1996, and Europe in March 1997. The impact of Super Mario 64 was felt almost immediately. In a short time, basically every single person who worked on a game with 3D movement drew inspiration from Nintendo's debut 64 adventure. Over the years, everyone from teams at Rare to the Hauser brothers at Rockstar Games have attributed some element of their games to Nintendo's first major foray into 3D. The emphasis on exploration was huge and truly captured the feeling of the joy of play. Just exploring around Peach's castle was gratifying. Over the years, some games have done it better. While Mario 64's camera still holds up better than it has any right to, it's still a 3D camera made in 1996. Some of the controls, namely the flying, are a little finicky. But pound for pound, Super Mario 64 is still a magnificent game that's only hindrance is that it came out in 1996, and time has passed. Complaining about its faults is similar to raging on the original Star Wars for looking old. This game is a straight-up masterpiece in almost every sense of the word. Nintendo has released a number of brilliant games since Mario 64, but few even hold a candle to the genre-creating wonder of Mario's polygonal quest. We welcome Super Mario 64 with open hearts, longing for that first feeling of throwing Bowser into bombs, racing Koopa the Quick, and figuring out all the tricks of Tiny Huge Island and Wet Dry World. Here's to you, Mario. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to NWR TV for more Nintendo coverage and check out NintendoWorldReport.com. If you'd like to, you can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/NWR.